fever, but just chills and had cold for the most part.
And Sylvia, I emailed you, it's like a spray. Okay. I didn't even know those were offices over there.
Yeah, we tested both. Thus far, I've been good.
You okay? I can forward that email to you if you'd like. Yes, sir.
You got the pass-through on?
I'm fine.
It's not,
Same thing.
you don't have anything connected yet.
What,
Yeah.
yeah.
Is it both your kids? Yes.
No, this is I hung out with my nieces and nephews last Wednesday. They got hot Thursday.
Okay.
My wife got hot.
I guess it just does that if I don't have a screen up. I didn't realize that.
Since Thursday, we swapped to separate beds because we knew that once the people started hopping hot, let's just separate.
No, Lowell's fine. Lowell's today.
You get your presents scarce and you come back in and big events.
Causes people to shift their chairs around.
Yeah, right. I was just sitting over there today and see what happened. Yeah, right.
I think we would welcome it.
Yeah, of course.
It changes every day. Changes daily.
What's the big canyon in West Texas?
Paladero.
It's nice where we are right now.
Maybe you put in the contract that future negotiations
I'm sorry?
future negotiations are held there.
Absolutely.
Yeah, that'd be fine.
I'd be a little warm.
Reggie Parker, works over there. Shane's downstairs in a meeting, but Reggie kind of was well. Okay.
There ain't no water in Paladero.
Yes, he's got a cross back to death.
I was there last, about 10 days ago. We had, I think, did a 6 mile hike. What is that?
I want to try it.
It looks like where I was. Is that your picture?
No, it's fine. It changes every day.
But it does not on there.
It thinks this is the second computer
I
screen.
see. Where is it?
I don't know.
We're on a fabulous Pecos River float with some of you guys' colleagues.
What's that now?
We're on a fabulous Pecos River kayak trip with some of your colleagues.
Oh, really? Which ones?
Chief Walker? I'm trying to remember the assistant chief at Martin was for several years.
Oh, Harry Evans, maybe? Yeah, Harry. That makes sense.
Yeah, Harry.
Something you do.
Yeah, and one of his kids was there. It was a great trip. 80 miles on the Pecos River in the wilderness.
Oh, nice.
Yeah. Anyway, good morning. How's everybody?
Good. Yeah.
I haven't talked to him in a few years. It's excuse.
I had Gio, I worked with him during the storm. He was working in the EOC. First time I've seen him in quite some time.
Good deal. Good memory. All right, so what do y'all have in mind?
Yeah, but I don't remember who went first last time in terms of the.
Yeah, did you want to?
I can, certainly can.
Oh, it doesn't matter to me. Did you go first last time?
I don't recall. I mean,
I think
I'm-
you did.
I think you
We're
did.
so
I
polite,
think
you know,
I
who knows?
did.
you
I
know?
think I did. I will.
I'm queued up to go. I can
Then
go.
let's go.
Yeah.
Why don't you go
So,
ahead?
we usually do a little
Yes.
summary because
I'm not,
you
I'm
just
mostly
can't
at
have one
speed.
person character that have both sides characterized it.
I agree.
It doesn't take too long.
Agree. We'll make sure that we listen carefully to yours and I'm sure you'll do the same.
Yeah, do we want to straighten out the projector a little bit?
Well, we're still in the same place on TAs. I think it's been a couple sessions. Oh, I'm sorry, it's not. Oh, it's a little bit off. I think it's been a couple sessions, I think 2 sessions since we TA'd. I think we got at least one, if not a couple more closer for today, so. We're gonna show what we have on dues, and we're still, we are able to provide some specs on a report. So we could do it one of 2 ways. We could write those specs in ourselves after we show you what we have on dues, or we could show you what we have and send it over to you with those specs, and you all could do it. So, you know, after we do it, you can kind of let us know what your preference is. We'll kind of get to either one. But we have it on kind of both sides of the table because of that. So ABL and I guess these are what you call some of your economic articles, which are probably pricing. Cadets and tire agreements. And we have management rights, which we plan on talking about today. Dues, like we talked about before, the part we're working on, which is limited indemnification. We have something else in civil service, shared communications, maintenance standards. We kind of believe that's a bundle with management rights. We've already made a pretty big concession on that, we feel. Savings clause, I think we're close on.
Yeah, I had actually had that in my notes to queue it for a TA.
Yeah, I just showed it still on my side of the table, but well, actually I'm showing your side of the table on this thing. Maybe I should have taken that off there, but we're close. Termination agreement, we probably have some additional questions on that, and then we have a proposal for the this merger. And we still need to get the wellness article developed, so we'll work on that. And so that leaves just the 2 undiscussed items so far. And that is, and then what we're calling these things in conflict, we haven't added anything else to it, and it sounds like dues is coming off that list, so that's it.
We are in session 8. And Bob, I know you had sent an email about moving the 28th to the 27th. We still need to kind of look at our calendars and everything, but was there something going on that it was, that week in particular is a really difficult week, and
yeah, it's something for me personally, honestly.
Okay.
I mean, and I haven't even talked to my side. I just wanted to see if you guys see flexibility. I know we talked about the 27th a while back and we couldn't do it.
Mhm.
I'm just trying to see if anything opened up. If it doesn't, I'll make arrangements.
Yeah, I want to say that when we nailed down 28, other folks on our team started putting things on the 27th.
That's fine. I was just asking.
We could still look at it.
We'll be here the 28th. We just
Okay.
wanted to ask. That's all. I appreciate you looking into it.
So T8 articles to date, I think we're on the same page. It's the same list that we currently have. The last time we TA'd anything was on 6/3. Proposals received from the AFA. I think we received almost every article except for 2 and 19, and we will be proposing 19 today. And so again, this is not indicative of which side of the table it's on. It's just what we've received.
Yep.
Proposals and responses by the city. The only thing that's not really on here are all the wage proposals such as ADL, overtime, hours of work, etc. Articles on AFA side of the table, and I think this lines up with what you will be going over today, except for 17 didn't look like it was on your list for today.
17, we may have some discussion on today.
And 11 you sent us over the weekend.
11 you sent us
So
over.
you had that on your side of your presentation, Bob?
We sent it, we asked for several articles on Friday, 11 was one of them, but we sent them over for context. They weren't quite fully developed. And we added something to 11 that we want to propose today. So
That's
I
fine.
think Sylvia had asked for it late in the day. I sent over the articles, but they were not like proposal ready, but there was some wording in there you might be able to, that might assist you in preparation.
Right, yeah, you had sent over 7, 11, and 18, but I think you're gonna make some changes in 7 and 11 as part of your presentation today.
Yeah, and 18.
And 18.
Yeah, and we probably have some questions on 17, but we don't have a proposal ready. We have some questions on 30, but we don't have a proposal ready, so.
We will be proposing 16 and 19 today, at least for the morning session.
Okay.
Ready CTA Article 28. And we can email that over to you and get it printed. Pending articles with no proposals from either side, 2 and 24 is what we have. I think this lines up with what you had, except.
No, we had a different, we had
Yeah.
2 and something else.
19.
We had 19
That's right.
in definitions,
That's right. So we're
and the
covering
reason
that
we
today.
didn't have 24 in there, we're planning on doing it today.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Got it. So that'll come off the list. And we just have these as being actively discussed, and I did not add any more in conflict stars to any of y'all's article. So I think, again, we're on the same page there, and it looks like we're gonna talk about a bunch of these today.
Okay.
So, and that's it. Just, here today as we always are, ready to discuss.
Okay.
Did you wanna go over your articles first?
Your choice.
Let's go ahead and put ours up there.
Okay.
I think that both of these, 16 and 19, are gonna be largely self-explanatory, but I do want to make a few comments about what we are working on, trying to achieve. A great deal of this promotions article remains intact. It's been a solid structure, and I think it's worked well for your membership and for the department. On section 7, this is an issue that we feel like needs to be adjusted to make sure that individuals that are promoting to the specialist rank have the required certification at the time of promotion. It doesn't apply, as I understand it, it doesn't apply to very many people in the department, but some people, the dispatch situation being an example, where individuals are not in the field maintaining that certification that they need to have to actually do the promotional position and the responsibilities. And this will make sure that that takes place. It's also my understanding from internal discussions that the opportunity to complete the course and have that credential is ubiquitous in the department, easy to do, always available, and so forth. And so we're not opposed to making sure it's available. We just think it always is available. And if that's something we can certainly discuss if there's a different operational understanding about how that works. But that's our proposal on that section 7 is cleanup language, and that's our reason for feeling like it's necessary. Let's go ahead. What's our next change there? I have one.
Division chiefs.
We are proposing in this section to have these all as appointed ranks, which is the removing the limitation in section 2, and then below that you'll see that there's a good bit of cleanup language in that section, merely to make sure that the rest of the article is consistent with that change from the prior limitation. And we would welcome your input into the logistics there of that process. I think we have a mutual interest in making sure we don't create any conflicts or problems. If you should agree to go along with our proposal to remove the limitations, that's all the rest of that is about. Next, we have the shift commander assignment.
There you go.
Get it just put it up there. That's good. And this is a recognition that a division chief can't be assigned as a shift commander unless they have completed the required training. We don't believe that passing the examination achieves the necessary assurance that individuals are prepared to perform that role at the time that they end up being assigned into that status. And we think that you understand that we're looking for that outcome. So, like I said, I think that was probably self-explanatory. And then I think next major change in this article is the probation as a part of promotion. This language you will see, which you may already know this, you may not, we would be glad to provide you some of that information. This is something that is on the table with our other bargaining units. We think it is, although this is a more limited proposal for battalion chief only, as a rank, we think that it is appropriate in our public safety organizations that promotions into supervisory positions involve a probationary process, so that individuals that are selected in a competitive selection process actually are able to perform that job and meet criteria once they get there. And so this language is highly similar to what we have on the table elsewhere. It's been customized, to fit and meet the fire department context. And then what it provides in here is that demotions under this section, unlike it would normally be under 143, are not disciplinary in nature, not subject to grievance or appeal and so forth. But we have included these assurances in here to make sure that it's a fair process, that individuals get placed on a reinstatement list and so forth, so that everybody has an opportunity to promote in the first place and then to satisfactorily achieve success in the promoted rank, which we think benefits both members and the public at large. So we'll invite your analysis and review on that proposal.
And that's just remembering
Those are
that.
all the changes.
Yes, ma'am.
Our next article is civilian employees. That was one of the ones you had on your discussion list, and so we are providing you with that proposal this morning. So, my recollection of the history on this article is that I believe we had done an effective job of sorting out a way to achieve some efficiencies and some cost savings in the operation of the department to make sure that we provide a high level of public service, reliability, turnaround, availability, the kinds of things that people typically complain about government. And so we are making these proposals, and I think they are entirely consistent with the commitment that we have to make sure that certified sworn firefighters are doing each of the functions and performing the duties that are essential to public safety as well as the safety of your members. And so we believe that the tweaks that we're talking about doing here are consistent with that commitment. We know it's important to you and your members. It's equally important to the chief and to the city. I know in the past I have analogized some of these things to paraprofessionals either in the medical field or the legal field, which of course I'm very familiar with, where I have a really good paralegal that does a lot of work that other lawyers do, but she does it under my supervision and authority. That's the context that we talk about here, where firefighters and certified sworn professionals are overseeing the quality and so forth of the work that's being done here, but at the same time, to the extent that these functions like code enforcement checkoffs and so forth and so on don't really require the level of experience and competence and training and so forth and so on that come with your membership. So that's what this is all about. We believe that tweak number 2 fits into that model. The consent decree is just conforming to the reality that that decree is no longer in effect. Section 7 is expanding just into the world that we live in today. Before, years and years ago, when we were talking about this in photography and videography, I didn't have a Facebook account, and so we didn't talk about this. in wildlife management, this again is an expansion which we recognize. We think it is very, very helpful to make sure this is done and done well and done timely. And that individuals that are in the first sentence, because I asked about how this would work. In the first sentence, you have those set of tasks under the direct supervision of the firefighter. The second sentence is people that are on the task force team. That would be the same kind of direct oversight, but it might not be an Austin firefighter. It might be somebody that was on the team. We think we're still accomplishing the same objective there, that what I call paraprofessionals in this role are doing something subject to firefighter oversight. Training instructors, we think once again, hopefully, maybe I'm not, walking a mile in your shoes here, but that looks like one that's pretty easy to say yes to and makes sense from our perspective. Section 10 is just a renewal. So any questions or feedback on those, or if not, then we will wait to hear after your caucus discussions and figure out where we go.
Yeah, we'll probably have some questions later.
Okay, very good.
Is that it?
Yep.
Okay.
That's those two, and that's what we have for this morning. We're still working on a number of others, so I don't have any official announcements about what we're gonna put on the table next, but we're working hard to get the
Okay.
other items off of the feasible to date list.
So on management rights, again, we kind of bundled this with means of standards. We feel like we've made a pretty big concession on means of standards, but we are unwilling to make any of these other changes on management rights. And so we're sending it back with the original language. And again, we think this is an article it's mature, it's been around a long time, but if there's some problems with it, you all are aware of. I feel like there's those problems on it, but we're concerned about just changing language this far into the game and saying it doesn't have an effect. That particularly concerns us. So that's management rights.
Let me ask about that just briefly, and then we'll need to talk extensively about this, I'm sure, internally. And maybe this has already been covered on the record. If it is, I'm not familiar with it, and I apologize. But help me understand why the change in the impasse outcome world or structure or whatever that we're in now as a result of the voters' proposition doesn't change the management rights items that we're talking about. Because it seems like to me that is you characterized it as mature, and in a normal bargaining context, I would probably see that very much like you do. That the parties have worked on this together, it is, it's grown, it's matured, the give and take or whatever between the two parties has structured it for good reasons, but now we're in a different structure. And so why doesn't that suggest that we need to revisit that language?
And what's the different structure we're under?
Going to arbitration as an impasse outcome instead of the previous, methods or outcomes that predated that led to your members and then the public deciding who wanted to do the process.
Right. Well, I mean, part of that is trying to meet the interests of the city. And so we're still, we wanted to put in what we thought were reasonable inclusions of that new environment you just discussed, that land arbitration. And the city had a lot of concern with that. We listened to them carefully on that. And their concerns seemed to be, they thought, and I don't want to characterize you guys incorrectly, but I believe the concern was you thought we were trying to write in binding arbitration in the contract. We were not. And so we're revisiting all those different sections we did that in. And so we're trying to it looks like we're coming to terms with that, and we will probably align with the promise you all made, and the acknowledgement you made. We are in this new environment. We don't want to memorialize it within the contract. And so I think if that's the way we're going to head, and it seems like we are, we want to do that wholesale. So that's why we wouldn't want to make changes to management rights or anything contemplating the new environment, if we head that way, we're just going to head that way, if that makes sense, so.
Well, that's what I asked for, I appreciate it, we'll think about that and consider how it.
And so you guys made some good arguments on that, we took them seriously. We haven't made decisions yet, I'm kind of letting you know the trend we're heading on, so. Now, in fairness, it doesn't mean we're gonna be able to get rid of every single excerpt. And so, but we're going to be more thoughtful as we, on your concerns and interests as we make them, so.
And just to clarify, A4 is still a package deal with A27?
Yes, yeah. And we're ready to sign both of those, but we feel like that's a bundle, if that makes sense. So dues, like I said, we can do this one a couple different ways. I can show you the indemnification language we have now. We tried to make it more focused on the individual firefighter, which I think that's what we discussed at the table. And then Tim has sent me a letter that kind of talks about the specs I need for the report, and what it will be essentially is a exception report. So maybe a little easier than I thought to make that report, perhaps. And so places where a dues deduction was made in the previous pay period, but not in this pay period, we would just need that identified, and then we would need, I think they have actual, according to Tim, they have some sort of action codes payroll does, so if you could have a list of those, we figured out what most of them are, for the years. But it sounds like that report might be easier than we thought, which would be great. So I'm gonna just show you the indemnification, and if you all decide that you want me to try to take a stab writing the specs into the article, I will. Or if you, or if it'd just be, I could just send you Tim's letter and you all want to add it, that's fine. So whatever your preference is. But it sounds like it might be a little more feasible than I might have originally thought.
Well, I think we would want you to draft
You want us to go ahead and add it in?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, because like I said, we haven't talked to them or not yet to see once we see it, so we certainly don't want it to be a proposal coming from us.
So I kind of described the concept of it. So what we'll do is we go into caucus, we'll add it in, and then just send it over to you as if we proposed it.
Perfect.
You can respond from that. So I think I mentioned last time, I mentioned again, I made so many changes that were so hard to reverse in my last proposal. I kind of went back to your proposal from 3.6, if that makes sense. I just didn't want to confuse anybody. And the indemnification language, we changed from 5 to 6, and this reason is we have the 6 that are shared sort of 501c3s, like the museum and the burn fund. It's a number of 6, not 5. And then we had a lot of discussion on indemnification language before, and I believe, I in earnest believe this satisfies your concerns, but we're talking about actions brought by a current or former member. We would indemnify. And again, I think this is a big concession because most of the contract, you look at it, there's this untold rule that we will mutually defend, and aggressively defend together. So when you all are asking for this is increasing our liability. I think this is a big concession on our part, but I think it's reasonable that we should be responsible for what our own members might do. So we're willing to make that concession. And besides that, I will add the spec as best we can and send it over to you later on today. We have done a lot of back and forth on this one. Our attorney listened to our last comments that were made at the table and came up with, I think you even might have said, hey, it was some of the wording, it wasn't so much the concept, the way I took it. And so he worked on that this weekend, and what I tried to do is just strike the other wording altogether and just put his wording in here. And we're hoping this gets us to where we can get an agreement.
Okay.
I know you have to study that.
Yeah, I remember where it used to say regardless of the attorney's interest, and now it says regardless of.
No, it said the city's interest,
Regardless of the city's interest. We'll need to look at it.
Yeah, there's,
Okay.
I don't think this is the one that's gonna kill the deal. You know, so we'll get through it and it'll be fine. So, might be the most active article of all for some reason. Who would have predicted that? Shared that was that more pointed conversation than we've had in the past, last time. I think Jeremy had some suggestions. I think Sarah said some things at the end that gave us a way forward, and Jeremy made some suggestions. And so we hope we're close on this one. Of course, we're still wondering about the overtime language. And again, I want to be clear. We're not like, we don't have the authority to say, we're going to send a bunch of AFA folks, this is going to be a bunch of overtime pay. We're talking about when the chief was talking about the matrix, disciplinary matrix, he invites us as stakeholders. We're literally the only ones in the room that aren't getting overtime. And it seems discriminatory. So if Lowell, if you're getting off shift and I'm getting off shift and you're on the management side and I'm on the labor side, a sheet goes around everybody for overtime. I can't sign it, but you can, just because, only reason is because I'm an invited AFA member instead of just an invited member. We would just like to remedy that. We're not trying to go broader than that. We're just trying to remedy that piece there. We struck a lot of this old stuff that you accepted a long time ago.
Let me ask a quick question on that last one.
Sure.
I believe I recall, although I couldn't point to another labor agreement in Texas, but I believe I've been involved in others, maybe Houston or San Antonio, where the association actually supplements pay for their members that lose overtime opportunities. Are you aware of any of those?
I know Fort Worth does. I know for sure Fort Worth does something like that. Yeah.
All right, thank you.
We've never been able to match that model. Yeah, I know they did it. Actually, we made an attempt to do it when I was early in my presidency, but I'm not sure how that would work in the type of context we're talking about here.
No, we haven't talked about it internally. I'm not
Yeah.
suggesting it. I was just trying to remember where I've seen it so I can kind of compare it to what your objective is here.
Yes,
That's all.
yeah, I don't know if it's like if the chief invites them to place the union and puts the money, what they try to do rather than pay a stipend, they try to pay by work done. It seems like a not bad model. Okay, so this is that kind of protracted conversation we had about the ethics policy, and again, try to characterize it objectively. It seems like the city wants to use the policy, we are fine with trying to use that. We just want some clarity that what we consider things we've had permission to do already are clarified that we continue those things. It seems like the city wants to make sure they're limited and that they're just not unlimited, where they can actually miss a work duty to do union business. We're not trying to go into that area, so we're hoping this language gets us a little closer.
Yeah, I think it's a step in the right direction, but we'll
Yeah.
definitely discuss it internally.
Well, we'll send it over and see where it goes. Any questions? Any further questions?
No.
Okay, drug testing. I think the only thing, and I want to say this early so I don't, disciplinary, do that one. No, I didn't have that on my list. It's weird.
It was on the list you put on the board, wasn't it?
Yes, but I have a list that I'm gonna put out in the morning. I think the reason was, I believe I actually told you I was gonna send you this weekend, and I didn't. And I kind of made a on-the-spot decision, I just laid it out real quick, so I think that's why it's not on my list, actually. So y'all laid out the disciplinary matrix. We'll get down to that in a minute, but I mean, we struck that, but only because we think we can get it done here at the table. And I know Chief Baker has a draft already been circulated around. We would just like to get it in the contract. I think we have time to do it. This side of the table is absolutely willing to put in the extra time to get it done. We're not opposed to the idea. Actually, personally, I'm not talking about my team, personally, I think it adds some certainty, and if it's done appropriately, it could be a positive thing. So we are willing to do that. We would prefer that rather than have a process later on, is to get it done here. And we think there's enough time to do that. The other things we've already talked about before, but I'm just going to go through them real quick. They were the process, mostly harassment process changes. And so I don't need to go through them, we're going through them Friday, but if there's any questions, since you've had a little time to think about it, I think I sent the article over, but not in a proposal form, we're happy to answer those questions.
We'll probably get some questions in the afternoon session.
Okay.
Yeah.
Good enough. So I'll send that one over too. Then now drug
I can't
testing.
decide if I like your picture.
You know, I don't even know how to change it.
It's so hot, it's so hot outside, it's kind of offensive, but on the other hand, it may be refreshing, and I can't make my mind.
Yeah, you know, this computer decided for me. I have no idea how to change it. So. I'm sure some market research on my surfing habits, the internet, picked that picture for me.
Well, that's not actually a bad outcome.
No, sometimes it's not. Get the information you want to see, maybe not the information you should see. We tried best face effort to take what we felt like y'all were close on with EMS. We realized it wasn't a TA, and then integrated into this. The only thing we don't have yet that we just kind of identified right before I came out here, and I didn't want to stop this proposal though, is a real bona fide, you know, maybe more bona fide definition of what suspicion testing is. Right now I think it's a policy, and I mention it now because I think that part needs some work. Maybe we need to put it in definitions, maybe put it in here, but I think it needs to be not just in a policy, I think it needs to be kind of agreed to, because the whole article hinges on what suspicion testing is. We want to make sure that's discussed and somewhat qualified, if that makes sense. Otherwise, other than that, we've really tried to take what EMS was doing and what we think y'all were close on. That's just our characterization, not yours, and put it into here. The other thing we added though was not just a saliva, but a blood test, and that would be the choice of the firefighter. And the reason is the research we've done shows that blood testing is more accurate. So like saliva has a tighter window, but it's still a metabolite test. And blood tests would be more accurate in telling whether you're impaired at the moment. And so if I was on CBD oils, or I was on, had a prescription for THC for post-incident stress, which I don't, but if I did, I would probably choose the blood test, because that'd be a more accurate depiction of whether I'm really impaired or
Would the
not.
firefighter pay for it?
No. But we're talking about, how many suspicion tests we do a year, Rob? I mean, very
No,
few.
I wasn't trying to be contentious, I just.
No, it'd be,
In many instances, when you say you have this option if you want to pay for it, that was missing, so I asked.
yeah. No, I thought I contemplated that, but I think the number we're talking about is such a small number, it's probably just fine to just, you know, have them do the test. It is a little more invasive, so the firefighter has a choice.
So it
They
takes
can
more
go after
time, it adds some number of hours to the process.
I'm sorry.
It adds a number of hours to the process. I think somebody's gonna have to go somewhere else to get it.
I don't know if that's true or not, but we certainly should look into that, yeah. I'm not saying we vetted the idea entirely, we just know that it is more accurate. That's kind of the gold standard when you look at it in impairment. In fact, most of the other tests are benchmarked off blood tests. I think EMS, another difference I would say is EMS, I think they said the impairment levels we put into policy, I think. And we were thinking that we should be looking at another way to do that. So we're saying it still needs to be a certified lab that does it, and then we use their quantities. And my understanding of these certified labs is they don't have customized tests. You know, they have tests that are kind of off the shelf. So you can't say in a policy, I want to make it this level, because it's going to be whatever tests they have on the shelf, you know. But we do think it should be a certified lab, just like we did agree last time, and we would be agreeable to using their levels of what they consider impairment to be, rather than listing them all in the contract or whatever. And we include alcohol, like, you know. And I think those are the major changes you might see from ours, which are, I think, are pretty minor. Maybe the flood would be considered more major. We'd like to quantify what reasonable suspicion is a little more in the contract, not leave it just to a policy that can be changed easily. We'd like to have that discussion. And we also know that certain job duties in the fire department, I think you all mentioned arson, would have to have a different treatment under this policy, and we're looking forward to seeing what your response would be to those job duties. So that's it. I don't think you'll see any big surprises other than what I laid out. But we're ready to send that over today to review. EMS merger. We took out this kind of goes along the trend line, I think, of trying to expunge some of the first binding arbitration language. We understand the way you're viewing it. And we didn't want to be viewed that way, I guess. That was not our intent. But we didn't feel like we got a firm answer on this. So this process kind of entails having 120 days to reach an agreement. Parties can request mediation or arbitration to resolve it, but it's not required. But our question is still kind of maintain. I know the intent. You guys explained that well. It's not your intent to do it unilaterally, but can you implement it? Does this process allow you to implement it unilaterally if you chose to? You know, you went through everything you can to get consensus that you can. Does the city have that authority? And so this last sentence would make it where they don't have that authority, right? So it kind of forces the answer to that question. But that's an important question to us, and I think y'all would know why. I mean, if it does change our wages, benefits, or working conditions merger, we feel like it should be negotiated, not just attempted. And that's really where our interest is. And the reason we wrote in that binding arbitration, we thought that was a good way to do it. We took it out because y'all didn't like it. So now you need to help us figure out what that mechanism would be, I guess, if that makes sense. And then on termination of agreement, I wanted to ask a couple questions. I think this might help clarify some of the responses that y'all have given us on that. And again, we had some binding arbitration aspects written into that. We're trying to meet your interest and seeing how we can take those out. So maybe these questions will help in that. So does the city believe that it has the ability to make unilateral changes to wages and working conditions after the expiration of the contract, but we're still negotiating or we are in interest of arbitration? That would be one question. I could send these to you all if that'd be helpful.
I think so.
Okay, I'll send them to you also. The other question would be, if the city does believe it has the ability, what legal authority are you relying on for that? Because some of the citations we sent you would, we think, indicate something different. And the city does not believe it has the ability, why would you not make the legally required continuation of the status quo during binding and interest arbitration explicit and automatic in the contract? I think that would help us get closer on that article. We can just answer it. I'll send those questions over to you all by email, so you could you'll have them. there. And that is it for us this morning.
Very good. We appreciate your interaction and your efforts with proposals. What's been the practice so far? We're gonna give you an estimate on coming back after we caucus for a little while.
It seems like it takes always till 2:00 at least. But it's only 11 now, so maybe we get it done sooner than that.
What I've always liked to do, if it's okay with everybody else, Sarah, you too, I always like to try to go back and go over the things that are here and see if there's something that we can actually get done.
I think so.
And secondarily, if there's something that we need to come back and have a brief interaction that will enhance our work in the meantime.
I know we'll have some questions, the articles you'll lay out, so I imagine you will too. So I'll send over what we sent.
So we're kind of crunching up against a lunch break. Why don't we tell you in 15 or 20 minutes whether or not we need a short assembly before we get together later in the evening?
Okay,
Fair enough?
sounds good.
Okay, so do you want me to, do you want to just go over there? No, you can kind of that. Or when you're ready, let me know. I told Greg yet, but. Okay.
Thank you.
We waiting for him?
No, are we good, Tim? Thanks. We're on the record, so, pretty good.
Gonna lead off with 427.
Yeah.
Ready when you are. Yep. So you had indicated earlier that you believe that 427 collectively are a possibility to get resolved, that they go together, which we don't disagree with that. We had proposed a number of additional language adjustments here just for the point of clarity. The article that we've discussed in the context of its evolution and maturity in our labor agreement for some period of time has given the prerogative to the city to make the management changes that are in section 1, subject to other specific provisions of the agreement, you know, the classic management rights model, everything that we have bargained away, we continue to retain. And if we can confirm with you on our bargaining record that the intended meaning in this contract and the historical understanding of meaning is that the perspective here, or whatever you want to call these, decide, I think clearly includes in the English language establishing, eliminating, or modifying, then we don't have a problem. We don't need to change the language. We think that's what it's always meant. If we can confirm that with you, then we're satisfied with this article is capturing the attention of our parties.
And that would include eliminating section 2.
We don't want the city to be able to, it looks like you're keeping section 2.
No, that's
Okay.
an error on my part, that should be deleted.
We don't want the city to be able to say in front of an arbitrator next year that something substantively has changed in management rights or management standards that we agreed to, you know.
Yes. I
So
understand
we don't want the city to make the argument, well, we're in this new environment now, and Bob said at the table that's always meant this, and therefore it's different now. We can, you know, we're gonna fall for that argument. We think that the same arguments we had when this was first written, we should be able to make in front of the arbitrator. And I think the arbitrator might agree with you that decide means some of those things, but I think the arbitrator needs to decide that, not us.
Okay, so we're not on the same page that retaining the right to decide job qualifications, hiring, the right to lay off or abolish, the right to make rules, that included creating them to begin with, eliminating them as you change your mind, or modifying them to some degree, that's what decide actually means. Because it seems to us that that's exactly what decide means.
This isn't the best example, so I apologize, but it's kind of like when we tried to challenge the word unequivocal in management standards. And the answer is the arbitrator, we'll argue in front of the arbitrator what that means. And I think it's likely the arbitrator might believe what you're putting in there as clarifications. I don't want to say that there's any substantive changes to this article. I want it to be the same article as before, and I don't want to put any bargaining history out there.
So it sounds like you're
indicates
saying-
like it changes.
It sounds like what you're saying is, I want to reach an ostensible agreement and then argue later about whether or not it actually means what we supposedly agreed that it means. I don't like that. I don't understand
I think
that.
that's
You want to,
I think that's very common from an arbitrator, isn't it? You know, to make a case of what the language means.
I don't think so. I think
No.
our purpose in bargaining is try to capture as much as possible of an actual meaning of the mind, so that I know what you mean by the words and you know what I mean by the words. And then in the future, there will be things that we didn't think about, new circumstances and developments came up, we didn't really sort through, well, what if this happens? What's the outcome?
Right.
And that's what gets arbitrated. But that most of the normal routine day-to-day things are easy to resolve because decide doesn't just mean to establish it in the first place, and once we put it there, we can't ever change it. Decide means to create it, or to decide we don't need it anymore, or to decide we need to tweak it a little bit. We want to know what our retained rights are and not just toss them up in the air and say, well, we'll just let an arbitrator decide what we retain.
Well, I know what you're saying.
Because we're hung on this one if that's the deal.
And we're not saying no. What I'm saying is that let me have our attorneys review it, and let's get back to you. I'm just trying to give you some of my thoughts on it.
That's fine.
And our main
And I
thing
welcome
is,
that.
we don't want to substantially change what we've done. We don't think we've done that with means of standards. We think it's concession. We wouldn't put it in there, but you guys want it. We think it's reasonable. So we're willing to say yes to that. I want to make sure we're not changing the nature of this going forward. And when you start saying clarifying, not you said, but I think maybe Sarah or Becky said clarifying.
I think I'd use the same words, that our original intention with the new language was to make it clear that we included all of the pieces of the puzzle that the word decide means.
Yeah. I understand. No, we're not saying no.
I apologize. I hope that we haven't raised your anxiety level by accidentally leaving section 2 in here.
Yeah, that was.
You know, my anxiety is so high already, it can't go any higher.
So don't, let's not get into the I don't trust them anymore mode, because we're trying to get to a meeting of the minds.
And we are too.
Okay.
You know, I think we both want to get a deal at the table, and I think we are working through things to get there.
Glad to hear that.
These are just important articles, as you know, so we need to be very careful about what we say yes to. You know, for instance, this article, and you know, these are talking about people in the past, we can talk bad about it, but there's been past people that represented the fire department who pulled management rights up and said because it says your ability to hire, the whole hiring article doesn't matter. You know, so these aren't theoretical things, these are things that occurred. and so that concerns us when we start talking about changing words when people are willing to do that sort of thing. Now, I'm not sure that's the way of operating now, but it certainly did operate that way in the past. So you can see why we might have some angst about that sort of thing. So let's just say we'll review it further and we'll get back to you.
And the only comment I would make about that is I think that every time we sit down at the table like this, everybody has to say, you know, we're going to listen to each other, we're going to come up with language and we think we know what it means and we really mean it this time. And you know, for the most part, that's water under the bridge. I put it in the same context that I did a minute ago when I said arbitrators should only decide the things that the parties really didn't resolve by their own language. And so it should be a fairly small set of things. And I think that's been true here for the most part. The level of arbitration has been very realistic in this bargaining unit.
Yeah, I don't disagree with that.
All right, so let's see, let's look at 27 real quick. Because the connection we see between the two is if we can reach an understanding about what the word decide and hear the word establish mean in application, then 27 that goes with that. So as I understand it, this maintenance of standards language, with the footnote there that we both understand, that's an acceptable article with you if we can resolve the questions in full.
Yes.
That's what we understood.
Yep.
Okay. Just wanted to make sure we were seeing both sides of the
Yeah.
picture.
It's not something we particularly put in, so I think it's a little bit of a concession, but I understand why you'd want to do. You know, it makes sense that that's a common standard of best practice.
Very good.
We signaled we may bring forward best practice
Mighty good.
arguments, and so it makes sense to me that you'd want that sort of certainty like you're talking about.
Thank you very much. All right.
Yes,
You're gonna go to 8.
I'm gonna go to 8.
All right.
Boy, this is a highly negotiated article.
I've been surprised that it has been as problematic as it is, but I think I'm up to speed on the, the interim history since I was here last. I will say that I appreciate the clear effort on y'all's part with your counter proposal to recognize the 2 different roles here that city attorney personnel play in this process. One as the legal advisor to the commission, just like any other body or agency of the city, whether it's the planning commission or any of those other groups. And so what we are proposing here is a little bit different. We thought that the additional language at the end of that sentence you'll see right there, right after the footnote 2, or the city attorney representing the fire department. I'm sorry. Where is their prior language? I need to
Yeah,
read
so
that prior.
Bob's language starts right here. Any city attorney acting in an advisory capacity to the commission will advise the commission in accordance with the attorney's professional judgment,
Right.
regardless of the position advocated by the fire chief or the fire chief's designee in the matter before the commission. So we had added in the matter before the commission and struck just the very last bit of your language. But otherwise, we generally agree with it.
So I think that what you had counter proposed to us largely and almost perfectly captured the concept that we have an advocate there on behalf of the case that's before the matter before the commission. We had concerns that the language or the city attorney representing the fire department in the matter for which the advice is provided confused that instead of clarifying it.
Okay.
Because we have an attorney for the commission who is not going to get outside of his or her role as a commission advisor and be there as an advocate for the city, which is obviously the problem. I've seen it happen before. I've seen anxiety about whether or not it is happening when it's not, even more, but I think that this solves the problem. So we'd ask you to take a look at it. You may need to run it back by Matt, we understand that.
So I'm trying to look at what's changed real quick. So I'm going back and forth here.
It's all right.
Yeah.
It's confusing because there's like 2 or 3 efforts to get it right.
Right.
That's there and crossed out and so forth.
Okay, well, I'll figure it out.
But right there in the middle, your most recent proposal said, any city attorney acting in advisory capacity to the commission will advise the commission in accordance with the attorney's professional judgment, regardless of the position advocated by the fire chief or the fire chief's designee, or the city attorney representing the fire department in the matter for which the advice is provided.
Well, you just strike down that one last.
Yeah.
Just that
I'm sorry, I
last
didn't catch
piece.
that.
And substituting for it in the matter before the commission. That's because that advocate is there on one side of the case, your advocate is there on the other side of the
Gotcha.
case.
Okay.
The other lawyer is the commission's lawyer.
Well, as you probably understand, this is attorney stuff, so we'll help our attorney. Appreciate it, though. Seems like we're making progress.
Nothing else in contention in that one, right?
Nope, that's it. The next one is 7.
Right. You're gonna talk about that, right?
Yes.
Right.
So this is another one, Bob, that I think we are super close.
That's good to hear.
Um,
This was in the conflict list at one point.
At one point, yeah, on YouTube, yeah. So I don't think there was any issue on the AFA side for this language. The authority has been given to the association by the employee either through written agreement or bylaws of the association, so I think we're okay with that.
I think that was your wording.
Yes. And we are okay with your wording here, so we're fine with the 6. And to be chosen by the AFA with 60 days notice, so we are okay with that. Section 7 as well, we are also okay with your indemnification language, so we did not change anything in that. The only thing that is pending from this article.
And let me mention, before you get into that, we thought we were gonna get past section 8, what she's talking about now. We've worked really hard on it, but unfortunately, we didn't get there yet. That's what she's talking about.
Yeah, so we spoke with payroll, And I think, Tim, you had let us know already that there is already a list that is provided every pay period, but it's just, everybody, right?
Yes.
So over 1,000 people. We are being told that it would be difficult to create a new list, but since the list that is provided every pay period includes the deduction codes, that maybe there is a way to just simply, some search function that we can use in Excel, that you can just do it with what you're already getting, but that is what we have not been able to kind of like figure out at the moment yet. So that is still pending.
And right off the bat, without talking to Tim, though, search for something that's there is easy. Search for something that's not there.
And I
not
wonder,
possible.
yeah,
So,
and I guess that's what we were talking with
Yeah.
payroll about is can we add some tab to it, to what you're already getting every pay period? And we're still talking about that. So I mean, we have a little footnote there that little section is just confirming with payroll what we can do, but I think 7 were essentially.
So, I was talking to Tim about this morning. So, the benevolent fund, y'all have been great about. We do it twice a year, and payroll's been really, really cooperative about that. It's in the contract. And so they literally take a whole list of people with different amounts twice a year and put them in. And we take the deductions, and that goes to firefighters or deceased. It's a system we've had around, I think since the 40s or maybe before, but became more electronic with the help of the city. So I have a committee that runs that. Now payroll, because it's a little more complicated, makes mistakes sometimes. And they know there's a mistake and they need them fixed. They'll call our people directly, and they work back and forth like really well, but they won't let Tim do that same thing. And so, I mean, maybe it doesn't need to be a phone call, maybe it needs to be just an email where he says, on this particular person, they give me the code while they're gone. I mean, maybe we're going too deep in this thing, If they're trying to reduce their work because they don't want to get a phone call and it to be disrupted, maybe we can do an email. We could limit it to, for this particular deduction, I need to know for this particular name what the deduction code is. That's all we're really looking for. So just a thought.
Yeah. Thank you for that information.
Yeah.
We're working.
That's exactly what we're doing, looking at the easiest, most easily replicable options.
No, I get it. I'm just trying to add some thoughts to it.
And that is,
But it looks like we are very close. That's encouraging.
I agree, it's out of confidence. That is all we have for right now.
We had a couple of questions on 16 and 19. Okay, so first off, before we get deep into it, we recommended there are no changes except for, I think, the change on a prerequisite for the fire specialist exam. And the reason we did this is we knew this could be an issue, a topic that we could have very wide swings of differences in opinion on how this should land between management and labor, because traditionally that's been the case. And so our surveys would show that members strongly want to take appointments away, And you're advocating that you want to have more appointments, which is exactly the same sort of discussions we've had almost every session we've ever been together, right? And I'm just telling you, that's why we said, let's just leave it alone, because we didn't want to go through all that back and forth, but we will, if we have to. I just want to let you know that's the reason.
Okay.
And I don't think any of that surprised anybody, because that's exactly the dynamics we've had almost every bargaining session we've ever had. Shoot right past the place I'm trying to get it once I get to it. Okay. So I think this language has been around since 2009, and I think management offered it all firefighters are provided an opportunity to complete the relief driver course at some point prior to the date they became eligible to take the fire specialist exam. And that was our first attempt to give some sort of prerequisite to the class. And I would say a lot of people on both sides of the table agree that's a good prerequisite. The problem is
the stricken language.
the stricken language. And you know, the language you contemplate is very similar, quite frankly. The problem is that came along with a promise, and the promise was that there'd be an opportunity. And I know you characterize it a little differently, but you don't know the exact circumstance of what happened, obviously. So I wouldn't hold you. That's why I didn't question you on it. But you know, there's this person, and for 12 years or whatever, 14 years maybe, it's been fine. You know, but recently we had a situation where we made some good faith arguments on how to give this person an opportunity that didn't have an opportunity, and management just didn't seem to cooperate with that from our side's assessment. And so, you know, it's always came with this promise that an opportunity be provided, and we really feel like it hadn't been. And so one way to solve that is just to get rid of this language, right? That's one way to solve it. Probably not the best way to solve it, but that's one way to solve it. Whatever we do here, whatever we end up doing, and mostly I'm just going to ask you questions right now, I'm not going to offer anything. It needs to come along with that promise that people have the opportunity to promote. We can't make it where, you know, management doesn't promise that the opportunity is granted, because then it could actually, you know, affect very negatively individuals that want to take promotion. And that's why the opportunity, the promise is so important. So let me ask a couple of questions, because there might be other ways to attack this. So right now, does management have the ability, in the assessment of management's position, to compel somebody to take a paddle class, a driver class? So can a supervisor or chief say, firefighter X, you got to take this class. We're providing the opportunity and the time and everything, but you got to take this class. Do they have the ability to do that?
I'll get you an answer.
Okay.
I mean, my off-the-cuff reaction is that they probably do, but I would need to study that to give you an answer that.
Yeah, and I would think that too. I think that's important that we stipulate certain things like that if we're going to work on this. Okay, good. So we'll get that later. If we were to work with this wording, it talks about bypassing the firefighter, putting them on the list. Are we talking about, I haven't looked up all these citations from 143, but are you saying 3 turndowns are off, or are we saying they'd be on the list until it expired? Are we talking about?
So we would just default back to 143.036. So if they are, so let's just say, for instance, this person is bypassed because they don't have the requisite certification, then they're going to go back on the eligibility list. But if they are bypassed again for some other reason, you know, then they'll go back on the eligibility list. So the rest of 036 is going to apply. So 3 times if they're bypassed, then they will be removed from the list.
But that's still an option that we can.
Yeah, I'm just wondering what the current language says.
Correct.
But there could be an
I
option
think
to say.
the absolute would be if they were bypassed for 3 other reasons under the statute, then it would be over with.
Sure.
But I think we're still open to considering, as long as they get the required certification, I think we're open to that being a possibility. Because we're not trying to keep somebody from getting promoted, we're trying to get them certified so they can run.
I understand, but there's, and we're not agreeing to any language, we're just trying to ask some questions.
just talking
so we can
out
see
loud.
how we can do the best we can here to get around this. Okay. Okay, that's it on that one for now. Thank you for your answers. Okay, this one's going to be tough for us, and for all the same reasons we just talked about. We've our surveys would like us to take appointments back. our surveys would like us to have the division chief rank entirely done by a test like police currently do.
Right.
You know, I mean, and it's,
But nobody wanted to give money back, right?
pardon me?
Nobody wanted to give money back, right?
Well, I'm not so sure that was the bargain there, but, we've already feel like we have given money back, that's another story. But yeah, I mean, we feel like at certain points, you reach an equilibrium in the deal, and, you know, people can differ in opinion, but we feel like this one's reached that equilibrium, and we don't like everything about it, but we think it's acceptable. And so I'm just trying to be frank, that's a tough one for us. And let me ask you this while we're on it though, so what's the need for this?
It's a request from management.
Pressure management? Okay. So, okay. Well, if you have any more information.
I think we can articulate some further specifics about the management logic behind that, but we'll have to have some conversation.
Okay, that's fine.
That's-
Because that, I mean, I'm telling you what we're thinking right now, but other information like that could be informative, right? If there is a need, if there's some expansion of program or something we're not thinking about, that would be great stuff to discuss. I think all this, Lowell, you just signaled that was to clean up the language for.
That's right. If we remove the limit on appointments, then those need to be adjusted. Should we not, then the old language would suffice.
Right. Okay. On the shift commander thing, we had a grievance on this, in the last couple of years, I guess, maybe 3 years ago, 4 years ago. Our surveys still show very strongly, the members think this is an important requirement for to have at least 2 years battalion chief experience before being placed basically in charge of an entire shift of people. We have no opposition to training programs. They might be appropriate, but the 2-year minimum would still be very important to us in this side. I mean, you know, the funny thing is, like 2 years for this requirement and 2 years for appointments. And, you know, you have to be a captain rank. But, I mean, there's some captains that are literally they make captain and they're appointed to AC right away. So really, they're a lieutenant, right? I mean, the reason we have some of these things is, I mean, we're going as far as we can stretch on some of them. We prefer something that's different. We made those agreements, and we're not trying to back up. We're not trying to back away from those agreements. If that makes sense. But there's still, it's not. It doesn't like you said. You want to get money back. We feel like we gave up a lot just by stretching that far. And I realize management feels differently. I'm just trying to give you our perspective. But I think the important part is we're not trying to reverse that. Even though our surveys come back differently, we made a bargain. We're trying to keep the bargain. Okay, so probationary status for promoted battalion chiefs. You know, I'm reading through this, and I know a little bit about the police program, and it seems like this is kind of a professional development. I guess labor brought this.
Correct?
forward,
Yes.
Correct.
So it's kind of a professional development sort of, you know, action, I guess, that training and expectations and stuff are put on somebody before they're given the official seat. So I guess that's what is it? So it's like professional development, I think, is what we're trying to accomplish. Is that fair to say?
I think, yeah, I'm not sure that's the way they would characterize it, but it might be.
Yeah.
And I think that's a reasonably good perspective to have.
And you know, I mean, just to say everything I know, I did talk to somebody from the bargaining team during our break from police, and they said they've been very challenged to to maintain professional development programs between ranks. And they would put in for them, and sometimes they get something, Bernal probably knows a lot about this stuff, but, you know, they might get sent to the FPI, but it's more of a generalized training, not localized training. And so they've been challenged over the years to get the funding for professional development, more localized training for rank. And so their offer of this had a lot to do with that they were having a hard time getting that done. There's some things they had some concerns about this even as they offered it, but they felt like that was the only way, or one of the only ways they could get like professional development put into the contract where it would be done every time. And I'm proud to say, in the Austin Fire Department, we have a pretty robust rank by rank professional development system, which I think would, you know, indicate that maybe this isn't quite as necessary for us.
Does that mean we get penalized for doing the right thing first?
I think we should exalt and celebrate doing the right thing first. I mean, it's a program that has been around forever, but I'd say it's been around since, I mean, it really started making it better around 2016. It's kind of grown from then, but we've got a pretty good system where when you're promoted, you're already working on your next rank.
So why haven't we earned the trust to have this?
Pardon me?
Why haven't we, having done that, earned the trust to have this?
I think they're two different things trying to accomplish the same objective. And why do you need trust when you've got something that's already functionally working? I mean, this raises a lot of questions. For instance, memorandum of performance expectations. Do you have a copy of that we can take a look at?
No, I don't think we would spend the time and energy to develop that before we started having the discussion about the framework.
Well, that's something that
I'm not going to build a house before I say, how would you like this one?
well, we're not gonna buy the house until we can see it. You know, the same sort of analogy, right? And you know, the fire service, and I think AFD, and I was just challenged when I was a supervisor role. We haven't been really good about performance expectation documents, you know, and I think there's been a couple of really good attempts. I think there's one recently that wasn't terrible, but we haven't had a really good success record on that. But we had a good success record in really good, robust, you know, rank-specific training. And this is what police were trying to accomplish with this, from my understanding. I'm not so sure we need this, but we're just asking questions right now. We're not going to say no or yes to anything. Okay. So you don't really have a memorandum of performance expectations. And so how objective or subjective would a person's demotion be based on these expectations that are not really articulated yet? Do we have any answer to that? If a person wasn't loyal enough, or a person wasn't whatever enough, I mean, how subjective?
I think we have good sound responses to those things. We'll have to put a response to the question, but I think we have really good answers to those questions.
Yeah, because if it was super objective, right, and if people could see what the objectives were, and they could, you know, I think our firefighters are very professional. They could get behind those and say, these are really things that we think are the meat of the fire service. We're all willing to live up to that. That's a lot different than a very subjective sort of set of conditions that may change based on personalities or whatever. I'm not saying that's what you're contemplating, but you see what I'm saying.
I do see what you're saying. I think inherently in this department, that's exactly not what the department would be doing, because it would be counterproductive. It's not consistent with operational expectations up and down the ranks.
Yeah, well, sometimes
I understand the
we
concern
might
about
feel
loyalty,
differently at times.
who's somebody's buddy, and all that kind of
Yeah.
stuff. Yeah, I understand.
Yeah, and you know, I'm not trying to be harsh, because I know when you get a couple positions removed from people, sometimes it's easier to get a little more critical of decisions.
Absolutely. And it doesn't lead me in the least, because I see that manipulation from the top and from the bottom.
Yeah.
And there is a section in there if you
Yeah,
go down. that goes
we're really not
Right.
trying to, I'm trying to stay away from manipulation on either side. I'm just trying to say, if we had a set of objectives
Correct.
that we could look at and it made sense, it'd be a lot easier to be amenable to it. Just trying to stay on the positive side here.
Yes, indeed.
And I don't know if you heard Sarah.
I
but-
did not.
Oh,
sorry.
she had mentioned that we kind of tried to address that a little bit by having the final decision made by the chief, so it's not some supervisor who just doesn't like their one just want to cover everything.
Yeah. But when you make the final decision, this is a concern, right? So if you make the final decision, the fire chief, then that means you're basically you're basically changing civil service law and writing an agreement that he can decide who gets demoted or not without appeal. That's a big deal. And so, I don't know that anybody should have that sort of authority, and civil service certainly doesn't contemplate anybody having that sort of authority. So we would have some compelling reasons and safeguards in order to say yes to something like that. Sorry, I didn't hear you, sir.
That was the last.
That might be it. Yeah, that might be it.
All right. So we do appreciate the feedback. We're probably gonna go back now and see if we can continue to chase down an answer on that payroll data.
Okay.
And then what should we contemplate on this most recent article on promotions? Do you want us to get back to you on feedback and questions? Do you want, can we anticipate a counter proposal? What's the best way?
I would really like to get some feedback on some of the questions before we signal any of our intent on that.
Okay. Anything further from y'all?
That's it for now for us. Appreciate it.
Anything else, sir? Appreciate it. We will keep you posted in the next little while.
Oh, see, that's a good picture right there, that's nice.
Is this where the fire festival is?
Is that?
That's-
Jeremy, are you shopping for a new background for your computer?
I was, I'm inspired by everybody's pictures, and I've got just the standard iPad.
Actual background
Yeah,
is
I'm
trusty.
wanting that.
You need a new
I
background.
know. I don't even think about it until today. I'll find something.
It started with that.
Oh, wow, you guys, next bargain.
Okay.
No, I wouldn't do that. Who called this meeting? Oh, it was me.
Thank you all for coming back. Yes. We ready? Well, thank you very much. Did y'all have anything else to visit about
We
Secretary?
have a couple of questions on 19 we'd like to go over.
Good. The thing that we wanted to clarify or make sure we're on the same page, we had several discussions today, one of which I want to thank you for your consideration on the management rights piece and my explanation for what we're trying to do. And your commitment to go back and think about that. I wanted to reiterate that we feel like we both have a responsibility to reach a meeting of the minds on this contract and to know what it means and says and what we're going to do with it, how we would expect an arbitrator to interpret it in the future. We don't believe that the old stale bargaining history from prior videos and so forth and so on defines this contract. We think it's up to us in this bargaining cycle to define this new contract. That's not to say, obviously, that here and elsewhere, prior bargaining history sometimes is relevant. What we are doing and what we have done is we have read every article in this contract based on what the plain language of the agreement says. And our understanding and view of the law of bargaining agreements is that we reach a deal, the language means what it means. That if your team feels like there's something in, Article 9 or 19 or whatever it is that is plain language is not consistent with what y'all wanted to achieve at the bargaining table this time, that we need to talk about it. And so that's what we've done on Article 4. We want to make sure that when we read it and we think we know clearly what it means, that we have put that out there and disclosed transparently to y'all, this is what we think it means, so we want to get on the same page. I want to welcome the same kind of input from y'all. If there's articles out there that you feel like the city doesn't understand what they really mean, then we want to talk about it. So we appear to have a greater interest in a clear current bargaining history than perhaps you do, and I just want to make sure that that's all.
It's a funny way to put it. Yeah, history matters. I don't think you can say none of the history from the past matters at all. In fact, I think a lot of it matters. It informs us of what we should have in this contract, right? And I think to the extent we need to clarify things for current understanding, that's great. But I mean, Mr. being candid, in the past, it seemed like many times the management side of the table tried to obfuscate and make wording kind of grayish, so it couldn't be interpreted. And so it's great now. Maybe it's improvement now that we're having this conversation on making things clearer. But I don't agree that bargaining history has no bearing on what we're doing here today. I think it has a lot of bearing.
And I have to clearly disagree with the suggestion that management has tried in the past to obfuscate any of the bargaining. I know from the fact, for being here for a long, long time, decades, as you know, I've never been in a meeting where somebody said, let's make this confusing or unclear where we can manipulate it in the future to our advantage. I will tell you that many times management felt like that's what was going on from your side of the table.
And that's common, right?
It's common. It
For
happens
each side
all
to think the
time.
other side's cynical and the bad guys. I get it.
And you're being sneaky and we're being sneaky and so forth. I don't think we've ever deliberately been sneaky about anything. And my personal philosophy here and everywhere else has always been, I want both of us to understand what this is. We had a contract dispute grievance arbitration years ago with the police contract where Larry Watts had negotiated the contract on behalf of the police union. I'd negotiated it for the city. We both testified as witnesses in that arbitration. And the arbitrator concluded that both of us had exactly the same understanding of what happened, and the contract did not apply to the issue that was in dispute because the parties had never resolved that issue. To me, that's the perfect outcome. Is both sides are being honest and transparent, and nobody won.
Well, I started my response by you saying you think your side of the table is trying to be clear and your side's not. That's how I started my response. So that's already a strong bias that you're indicating about our side of the table. I suggest we try to eliminate these biases as much as possible.
That's what
We have
I'm
each side of the table.
Couldn't agree.
Be candid and honest with each other and try to get a contract.
Yep, me too. That's what we want. And I wanted to make sure that y'all had the opportunity with the full realization of the way, of our perspective and how we're approaching this. Because our review of every article has been, what does it say? What does it mean? Plain language. Is there something here where maybe there is some historical or current lack of clarity or need to resolve this going forward? And so that's all we're trying to do.
I think it's laudable. I think we both should try to do that.
Thank you.
Where it could have implications beyond just clarity is what we have concerns. That's why we need to not say no to 4, but review it further.
Right, and that's been obvious in a number of the questions that you've asked and the approach that you're saying. I don't want to sign something here if I don't know what it means. We're on the same page.
Pretty good.
And you wanted to ask some questions.
Yeah. Love to ask questions. First of all, before I forget, I think you satisfied their information request except for the longevity calculation, if I'm not mistaken. That was,
We can answer that. We know.
Sarah had sent the information to you, so we'll double check on.
oh,
Yeah.
was that today or was that?
No. When we
No,
sent
not
it last
that.
week,
That was the.
if you're saying you're missing something, then we'll go back and we'll check.
Okay,
Yeah.
it was just, well, I mean, if you guys know what it is, don't need to say it again, but it had to deal with longevity calculation on halftime rate, premium rate. And let me ask this, where are we on the wages presentation from the management side, do we know?
We have just been working on that diligently just a few minutes ago.
Okay, but we don't have,
And so
you don't have the projected
It's
date.
imminent, but I can't tell you right now when it's gonna happen.
Ours is imminent too. But when you get more, when we have a little more clarity on when the date might be, that'd be helpful.
And we will do exactly that.
Thank you. So on the civilian article, okay, section 2, employees trained to perform AFD maintenance inspections on behalf of AFD. What exactly what's the vision there? What are we contemplating?
My understanding is that's code enforcement, checklist kind of work that individuals would be carrying out that are properly trained to do so, leaving the higher order structured evaluations and so forth to the sworn firefighter personnel and the kinds of things, kind of like on, like I've done before, and I'm sure it's not a perfect match, but my paralegal takes a set of discovery, which you're familiar with, and the litigation that we've had before, comes in from the other side, goes through it, provides me a set of documents to look at that are relevant to it, many times drafts proposed answers and gives them to me as a starting point. And as I see it, that's the way this kind of thing works. The routine kinds of things that somebody can do after training and some exposure to the process means that people with a higher level of understanding and expertise can deal with the bigger problems and the challenges and the higher risk and so forth and so on.
No,
So-
I understand the concept of delegations,
Yeah.
but I guess what I'm trying to find out is more what the vision is. You're gonna hire 100 inspectors, you're gonna hire 50.
Okay,
it
scope
could
of
be
the program
civilian.
kind of thing. And I don't know those answers, but I will get you some answers to that.
Okay. And can,
Yeah, you're trying to decide whether or not the exception's gonna follow and swallow the rule, I understand.
yeah, I just wanna know more about it. It's a very open-ended statement. Like I think we're both trying to do, we're not trying to dismiss things out of hand until we get more detail. What percentage of all inspections are maintenance inspections? What percentage of the time spent on inspections are maintenance inspections would be good to know.
Okay.
What kind of training would they have to do? And I know that Texas Commission on Fire Protection used to require a fire cert, and I think the last couple of legislative sessions, they might have changed that a little bit, so can civilians get Texas Commission on Fire Protection, Fire Department inspection certification? I'm not even sure the answer to that. That would be very important, because without that, you couldn't do this at all. Are we talking about retired firefighters, or are we talking about just regular civilians?
Regular civilians.
Okay. And so,
In this context, one of the other sections in the article is retired firefighters.
right. And so there's, I think, in my opinion, I think the opinion of a lot of people, there's a value in having a civil service person do an inspection, because they're less influenceable, and I've heard rumor of this among other inspectors when they talk to our inspectors, how their bosses might ask them this or that, but our folks follow the code, and there's some political divorcement from that. They could just follow the code without having sort of people leaning on them and telling them they gotta do this or that. So that could be, even if there's any truth in those sort of premises, that could even be a safety issue, And so I think what you said at one point,
So are you suggesting that, I think you're saying that firefighters couldn't be politically influenced or otherwise
much less
lean
likely
in
to,
favor of their buddies?
yes.
Okay.
Yeah. I'm just relaying an anecdote from what I've heard from other inspectors talking about.
And we're looking at it more like it doesn't take a certified firefighter to count the number of fire extinguishers or make sure the exit signs are up. Fairly straightforward, simple, no discretion involved code enforcement criteria.
If that's all it ever was, yeah. If that's all it ever was, but it could be more than that, likely could be more than that, so. So those are important things to kind of get a little more information on. What would it do to the existing workforce? It'd be good to know. It's just a lot. To me, this is a very broad, this one sentence could contemplate very large changes. We'd just like to get a little more idea what's being contemplated. This is section 7. Oh, I don't have it up there. I'm sorry. I thought I was showing you guys this.
I've got it committed to me.
Sorry about that. I do that to my team all the time, so I'm just joking. This seems like a nothing change here, right?
I think it's a
Social
nothing
media,
change.
I can't see
Yeah, I think it's
how that changes a whole lot.
we're not sneaking up on you on that one at all.
That's the one we're not sticking up on.
That's the one.
Do we have current direct supervision at the air shops now?
I believe so. But, I haven't been out there, so,
Well, I'm thinking you might be able to talk to other people who would know though, right?
yes.
Okay. Because, again, history does matter to some degree. This is air shops. Some departments, I think Fort Worth is one of them, I'm not mistaken. All their firefighters, all their air techs are firefighters. And the way civil service law is written could be interpreted that way.
I believe that is true in Fort Worth, and I remember, we talked in our team some about past discussions that I've had on this same topic. I can remember if it was here, Houston, or Fort Worth, but it was
There's a
one
couple,
of
I
those.
think they're waning away from it over
I
time.
think it was probably Houston.
Yeah.
That I remember some pretty specific things about this. And I think the city, what we're not trying to do here is we're not trying, nor would we even do anything that would change the quality control here. It's the direct supervision of an on-site sit around, you know, and lean on a broom person.
Yeah.
You know? And I don't mean to minimize the critical reality of this function. We understand that, you know, it's life and death whether or not you got air.
Well, I mean, again, it's like history is important because this was a big give last time. You know, so what it used to be is that I think Austin's a quick adopter that we don't need to be the techs, but we want to have an air mask. We used to call an air mask captain there. So uniform was supervising directly to make sure that the safety thing was done correctly. And then I think this is somewhat personality driven, but also made sense. There was a person that seemed like he'd be good, so maybe we don't need the captain there, but we do need direct supervision of the captain. And so this is another step away from that. I just want to express that that's a lot of steps away from where we started. It becomes harder and harder for us to say yes to that. So.
I understand that, and I appreciate the fact that you understand that it's also predominantly a technical competence job to take the apparatus, know how it works, do it right every time, make no mistakes.
Yeah.
So,
Well, there was a anecdote. Okay, there was a time when between supervisions that a tech thought it'd be okay to use, and it never happened. Somebody stopped it, but they thought it'd be okay to use some non-certified couplings for one of our RIC bottles, you know. And it made sense to them from a technical standpoint, but it didn't make sense to us from a safety standpoint. And I'm not saying those issues happen all the time, but that's one reason, one example why having a direct supervision of uniform be there, because they're gonna be looking out for the brothers and sisters, maybe a little bit higher level than the tech will, that understands their job well, but they're just, you know, going through the motions of completing their task every day. So, just thanks for listening to our side.
Sure.
Let me see if I have any questions on the welfare division. I don't know that I do. I think the way you explained it, I understand the first sentence we're taking out about suppression duties, but we're kind of adding back that they can't do suppression duties at the bottom except for deployments from TIFMAS.
correct.
Okay.
So we allow them to do things in the first sentence subject to direct supervision of the firefighter, which obviously would be, now, Chief, I think that means one of our firefighters, right? In the first sentence, under direct supervision of the firefighter. That's people in our division that are doing that under direct supervision of one of our people. In the second sentence, they could be used for fire suppression duties, but the people that covered by that sentence could be supervised by somebody from another agency that are part of the team. Got that, Chief?
Say the second part again, I'm sorry.
Well, it says unless deployed as a Texas TIFMAS team. And so they would be supervised by whoever the commander was on the team, which might not be an Austin firefighter, but it would be a firefighter from some agency. Anyway, that's the way I read the assurances
And I would,
for the
we
oversight.
agreed to that. I think that's the way we would interpret that way too. Why don't we switch up the word management for prevention on this third sentence from the bottom in the wildfire?
Do we have an answer to that?
We do, I think it came from the, with Dr. Paulson.
Okay, we will get you an answer. I don't know the answer.
So let's move down to training instructors. It says here that, so I understand the first part. It looks like you're saying that there are, tell me if it goes broader than this. That you're looking at maybe retired people used to teach at the academy could come back and teach at the academy. Is that basically what it contemplates, the first part of this first sentence?
Yes, that's right.
Okay. And could they not do that now?
I don't know whether or not there was an issue about that or not.
I just always assumed they could, but
And I
maybe,
think it's-
maybe I'm wrong on that.
I think it's happened before.
Okay.
So, I mean, I don't have.
Renell might have a different opinion. I'll let you guys talk about it
I
later.
think when we rehire a retired firefighter, they become a civilian. And we've always assumed that because of this article in the CBA, they cannot be hired to teach those.
Yeah, that kind of makes sense, whether it's been done or not, this would clarify that, right? Make it
And I
work.
may be confused about that, just in the police context.
That could,
Probably.
they do it all the time.
Yes, that's right, they do it all the time.
Okay, but the second part of the sentence is what I'm needing more clarification on. Other civilian employees working in education services shall be limited to instructing subjects that do not require Texas Commission Fire Protection certifications. What is contemplated there?
Well, there are some that are required certification and some that aren't, and so other topics could be taught by other civilian employees.
I heard the example of EMT certification, that having someone else teach some of that piece, or some of the community resources piece, some of the getting familiar with the community kinds of pieces.
So I didn't hear the first part of what you said. I apologize.
That's
Are you saying that civilians could teach EMS subjects?
EMT.
EMT subjects? Okay.
Basic, EMT basic.
And of course, I think civilians already teach things like administrative forms and stuff like that, right? And I guess that would clean up that sort of thing, where we're not saying a non-uniform is teaching a class on HR forms or
Ladders,
something.
yeah.
And that I don't think would be a problem at all to clarify. The issue of a civilian possibly teaching EMT classes would be a little more something we would need to discuss and need a little more information on. If that's what the vision is. Now, if it's just cleaning up administrative teaching, that's a little different, right? But, so, if y'all want civilians to teach EMT classes to our firefighters, we'd like a little more information about what you plan on doing there. Good, please.
Right, I got that, I got core curriculum, what that would consist of, in particular EMT, basic instruction, no problem with the admin type issues.
Do we have any other questions from the group? Jeremy? Vanessa? That's it.
Fine, appreciate it, thank you all for coming back.
Oh, real quick on the PIR stuff, we did get your is calculated and longevity, how that's factored into,
The longevity piece.
Yeah.
To find more clearly. I think Joy and I just weren't sure who was doing.
Oh,
If it was gonna be at the
okay.
corporate level or at the department level, so we'll get that figured
I
out.
think I included under the follow-up email too, but,
okay.
if you need more detail on
You
that.
just wanted the calculations for what goes into longevity pay, right?
Yeah, and when it's paid, so.
I don't think that's what the PIR.
So let me just say real quick then, I'm sorry about this. So years ago, we went from a paid every pay period to lump sum. It was told to me that the halftime pay increase for that particular compensation for that pay period would be paid in that pay period. Well, that doesn't appear to be happening. So what I suspect is happening is you're prorating it over the entire year and paying an extra half. You're paying additional compensation every pay period as part of the halftime rate. I just need verification of that, that's all. Because if they're both not being done, then that's a problem. That means we're not calculating our halftime correct. I don't suspect that's the case, but I'd like to verify.
Is that how you wrote it in the request?
Pardon me?
Is that how you wrote it into the request?
No, I think I just said something like, we need information on half pay calculations and
I
premium.
think it was a verbal
Yeah,
request as well.
you can send us an email though,
Okay,
but we wrote it in.
But we've got it.
and we can talk offline about it too, if it's more helpful.
Well,
All right, thank you.
We're gonna talk about it right now.
Okay,
Just send us a reminder email. just
I'll do it.
because
Thank you.
We have a clever system where we review those all the time and make sure